Well, good evening everyone and welcome to this evening's devotions. I want to read tonight from Psalm number 9. Psalm 9 verse 1 says, I will give thanks to you, Lord, with all my heart. I will tell of all your wonderful deeds. I will be glad and rejoice in you. I will sing the praises of your name, O Most High. My enemies turn back, they stumble and perish before you. For you have upheld my right and my cause, sitting enthroned as the righteous judge. You have rebuked the nations and destroyed the wicked. You have blotted out their name for ever and ever. Endless ruin has overtaken my enemies. You have uprooted their cities. Even the memory of them has perished. The Lord reigns forever. He has established his throne for judgment. He rules the world in righteousness and judges the peoples with equity. The Lord is a refuge for the oppressed, a stronghold in times of trouble. Those who know your name trust in you, for you, Lord, have never forsaken those who seek you. Amen. God bless his word to us tonight. Well, Psalms 9 and 10 are normally taken together as a single unit. In the Greek version of the Old Testament, they are together as one psalm. The themes of past, present and future deliverance run through both the psalms. If Psalm 8 were one side of a coin, then it's fair to say that Psalms 9 and 10 would be the other. Psalm 8 is filled with awe and wonderment that God would concern himself so deeply with mankind. Whereas Psalm 9 and 10, as Moitier notes, teaches us about the kind of prayer that arms us as we face the pressures of life with calm assurance. So we shift from the tranquility and awe and wonder of Psalm 8 into the pressures of life in Psalm 9. That David has been in trouble is obvious from the psalm, and so the opening verse could be read as his attempt to appease God in order to gain deliverance. But the truth is actually the other way around. To begin with, he's addressing God, the one who looks not on the outward appearance but on the heart. You can't fool God. Not only does David declare that his praise is wholehearted, it comes on the back of having recounted God's wonderful deeds on his behalf in the past. Verses 3 to 6 are probably remembered examples of times in the past that God has delivered him. But that recollection of God's past deliverance not only stirs his heart to praise and thanksgiving to the Lord, it reminds him of the very character of God, that God is the God he is. In verse 7 then, he recalls that the Lord is enthroned forever, that God rules and reigns, and that unlike the capricious and fickle gods of the nations, Yahweh's throne, which is established forever, is established for justice. Furthermore, his justice is righteous and upright. That is to say, his justice is right and with integrity. Yahweh cannot be bribed or bargained with. He is not swayed by public opinion. He is the just judge who always judges with righteousness and integrity. We live in a world where there seems to be very little justice. Only this week in America, yet another black man was killed by the police despite the fact that he was not resisting arrest. He was lying flat on the ground and complaining that he couldn't breathe as a police officer knelt on his neck. In Iran, Atina Farghadani was given an 18-month prison sentence for drawing a cartoon critical of the government. She was also charged with indecency and adultery because she shook hands with her male lawyer when he came to visit her in prison. In the UK, there is a general and growing sense of anger that one powerfully connected person has gotten away with breaking the rules that the rest of us have kept, for some at great personal cost. again and again from every part of the world and every nation, we are reminded that justice is for the powerful, the rich, and the well-connected. What David is telling us here is that ultimately no one can escape justice, because God's throne is established forever. It is fixed forever, and he judges the whole world with righteousness and uprightness. And it's that recollection that leads him to what is the central point of this psalm of praise and thanksgiving. It is because God is a just and righteous judge who judges the whole world, not just the nation of Israel. And it's because of that David is able to declare that the Lord is a refuge for the oppressed, a stronghold in times of trouble. Those who know your name trust in you, for you, Lord, have never forsaken those who seek you. A stronghold is a place of safety and refuge in times of great trouble. The Hebrew word refers to a place high out of reach of the enemy. And so Mottier translates it as meaning that Yahweh will be at top security for the crushed and those going through periods of distress. David praises God for being a refuge in times of trouble, not only because that has been his past experience, but it is also linked to the fact that God is on the throne to dispense justice. As David points out in verses 15 to 18, the wicked effectively condemn themselves by their wickedness. They fall into a pit of their own making. And because God is the just judge who rules, he will never forget the needy, and he will always remain a hope and a refuge to the afflicted. God's very throne has been established for justice, and the guilty will not escape, no matter how that much it might look otherwise in the present circumstances. Furthermore, those who know his name put their trust in him. By that, David means that those who know what his name stands for, that God is righteous, that God is holy, and that God is just. Since they know what God is like, they put their trust in him. That is to say, they put their trust in his justice. What that does is it prevents us from vigilantism. It saves us from seeking to be judge and jury and executioner. And the fact is, we are never content with just being judge and jury. We always want to be the executioner. We always want to see justice dispensed. Secondly, freed from our need to enact our own brand of justice, it brings us peace and enables thanksgiving, for we know that no matter how it might seem at the moment, no one will escape the justice of God. Not one word spoken, not one deed done will be forgotten by God. In Romans 14, Paul reminds us, so then each of us will be accountable to God. Let us therefore no longer pass judgment on one another, but resolve instead never to put a stumbling block or hindrance in the way of another. It should be noted, however, that trusting in God's future justice doesn't prevent us from asking God to be merciful and enact his judgment swiftly now. And so the psalm ends with a plea for God to arise and enact his promised judgment on the wicked, not at some time in the future, but now. Despite all of our troubles, confidence in God's justice opens the door to praise for who he is, for all that he has done, all that he is doing, and all that he will do in the future. It gives us comfort knowing that, as David affirms in verse 18, the needy shall not always be forgotten, and the hope of the poor shall not perish forever. The final plea to God to arise and enact his judgment and show the wicked that they are just men suggests that that is what they'd forgotten. And in fact, that might be a root cause of their wickedness. They have forgotten that they are just men who must answer to a just God. It also perhaps reminds us that when we act as judge, jury, and executioner, we too forget that we are men, for in doing so we take God's place and so dig our own pit, for we too will stand before his throne and give an account. Thanks for listening.